Hello everyone, I'm Claudia Skinner again, and I am going to summarize this week's reading about behaviorism. The chapter that I am going to review is chapter 12, which is the question of control. And it was a much easier read than many of the other chapters. Still struggle a little bit in some of the sections, but I hope that I was able to produce the right summary. So the question of control is a person's behavior. If a person's behavior is controlled by his or her genetic and environmental history, that is the main point in Skinner's chapter 12. This theory, of course, has been objective because as humans, we like to think that we're the ones that are in control and not the ones that are controlled. According to Skinner, we cannot control ourselves. We can only control the controlling conditions around us. Skinner then takes us through various topics related to control, including counter-control, ethics and compassion, the struggle of freedom, the controlling social environment, and the evolution of culture. In counter-control, according to Skinner, agencies, or institutions like governments, religions, etc., exert a powerful exert a control that sometimes is powerful. Those that are controlled take action based on what these organizations tell them or say is right or wrong. And then if you feel that if you're not aligned with the control of this particular organization, then you will take something that is called a counter view or a counterpoint. So if you're feeling control and that goes against what is right in your environment, you're going to launch into a counter control. I like this Homer Simpson thing, little blurb that says, Lisa, if you don't like your job, you don't have to strike. You just go in every day and you do a really half-ass job. That's the American way. So this is sort of what Skinner is trying to get at throughout the chapter, which is that we are controlled by our environment and our genetics, and how we do and what we do, how we oppose to it, has to do with our environment and even our culture. But we'll get to that a little bit later. In terms of ethics and compassion, based on Skinner, the way we treat others is a reflection of how we are treated. Those that have compassion or are humanitarians is really a reflection of how they are treated. People were punished before behavior was said to be good or bad. So we really, what is good is really based on what we believe is the normal good within our culture. We behave morally or ethically depend on the contingencies responsible for our behavior. So we behave morally or ethically depending on a particular environment. So that's the whole theory of relativism, which is what is good is what we call good, and not necessarily what it could be good for others. So what is good for me in my environment might not be necessarily good for someone else in their environment. And we can think of various religions where this is the case. Then we're going to, according to Skinner, and I have to read the quote, operant behavior under positive reinforcement is distinguished by the lack of any immediately antecedent, even which will possibly serve as a cause. And as a result, it has been said to show the inner organization called free will. the whole concept of free will is something that Skinner just doesn't believe in. Again, we feel free when our actions are positively reinforced, not specifically because we are free. Feeling free doesn't mean that we are free. We may be in an environment that we feel free because we don't feel control. But that may not be the case. So his whole philosophy is that feeling free is not a reliable indication that we are. Then we move on to the controlling social environment. Human opposes any form of control. When we feel control, we feel that we have to fight it. Controlling the environment and human behavior can only be achieved with the scientific analysis of human behavior. We start with the fact that a human behavior is always controlled by the environment and genes. As infants, we're born into an environment that will control us. It is how we behave in that environment and how it makes the most of our genetic endowment. We are controlled by our social environment. Another way we are controlled is with the future promise. So in the concept of a social environment, and things like religion, the future promise of an afterlife will control some of our behavior, what we think is good and what we think is evil. Which moves into the evolution of culture. So according to Skinner, the social environment is our culture, and it's a set of contingency of reinforcement that is maintained by a group. So our culture is really things that are reinforced in a particular group setting. Culture controls the behavior of its members of the group that practices. So we can think of, the American culture or a Hispanic culture, and we are controlled. What we do is controlled by how that particular group sees certain things. So in some cultures, something may be seen as a good behavior and is reinforced, whereas in other cultures, that same behavior will be frowned upon. There's many examples of this throughout our world. In some Asian countries versus our country, there is just so many different views of, for example, women, that this is the way that we're supposed to behave, and this is what makes how we can contribute to society, versus in another country how women are treated and behave. So this brings us to the question of who is in control, and look at the mistakes of the individual. So when we say who is in control, we're making a mistake because we're saying who. We're thinking that there's an individual that is being in control. And again, Skinner's view is that there's no individual in control. Instead, that the world is the one that controls us, and we must look at the conditions under what people live in to realize what is it that is controlling us. So who is in control? I recently watched a video, and I included the YouTube link if anybody wants to watch it. It's actually a pretty easy one to watch, and it will really help you understand the chapter a little bit more. So they went through some of the theories that are in this chapter, and the question of who is in control and how can we avoid being in control, because again, as humans, we don't want to be controlled. The video went through some of the themes of the chapter and the concept of who controls us. So my question is, if we are controlled, then who controls us? Again, that is thinking that is a person, but I'm not necessarily saying that is a person. So if we understand all the possible techniques of control, can we be controlled, or will we be the ones that can exert control over others? Is there such thing? And this leads us to the question of, is there such thing as being in control? So I guess that's sort of a two-part question. Do you believe that if we understand the techniques of control, we can then avoid being in control, or we can exert being the ones in control? And is there such thing as being in control? Thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to see some of the answers.